Hey, it's been a long time, but we're back. What a do with your host, Timothy Dean Johnson, and we call it TJ. Along with me, we've got Chase Johnson and wifey Kristen Johnson with us as well. We thought we'd do a little bit of getting back to the basics of stuff with what to do. It's been a long time since we've been on anything like this for podcasts, so we're kind of getting some rust off us and getting some things done and going back through some of the settings. But this podcast is going to be a little bit dated because we're actually talking about Christmas stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah. So we were actually you were doing decorations today.
Yes.
So what speared that on when we were talking about decorations?
What speared on doing the decorations? Well, it was a warm day and I wanted to make sure I got the outside decorations up while it was warm and not snowing.
Yeah. Well, and it's weird because we're up in Wisconsin, right? So it's December and we still don't have any snow on the ground, which is crazy. And yesterday it was 44. No, today was 40. No, yesterday was 44 degrees.
Yeah.
And today was very close to the same thing, right? So it was nice to be outside doing some of the decorations and putting up some lights and some of that fake stuff that we have outside and all that good stuff. And Chase, you helped her out, right?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Here and there.
So you had to bring everything up from the basement type thing, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
He was the tall person that had to reach the tall things.
Right. And we had our niece, Brianna, come over and help us out as well. So that was kind of cool. So shouts out to Brianna if she's going to listen to this or not, but thank you very much for that. So as we were going through looking at the decorations and doing certain things, we started thinking about what to do would be a good podcast of what did we do for traditions with Christmas, right? And how did some of the other traditions around the world kind of spawn or happen? You know, where did Santa Claus come from or Saint Nick? And when we look at things, we always think about, well, and we've always taught that with our kids, it was that the true meaning of Christmas was to celebrate the birth of Jesus Christ.
Right.
Yeah. So the commercial side of it started popping in with Santa Claus and, you know, with Macy's and all other stuff and the Thanksgiving parades and stuff like that. But I think you had some topics we were talking about of what did what.
Well, first I thought we'd just talk about what our traditions were growing up because everybody's a little bit different.
Yeah. So what did you guys do when you were a kid?
So one of the things that we did was a lot of times we would go to late night mass on Christmas Eve. And then by the time we would get home, Santa had already been there and left. And we would get to open some of our gifts on Christmas Eve. And then we'd have our gifts from Santa on Christmas Eve, and then Christmas morning we get to open up the rest of the gifts.
So those are more like the practical stuff, like socks and underwear, stuff like that, or was it Santa gave toys, or what did he do?
Santa gave the toys, but he never wrapped them when I was a kid.
Oh, okay.
And then the wrapped presents were from mom and dad and whoever,
and uncles, things like that.
Yeah. Well, then we had the big family tradition where we got aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, all going to the aunt's house and opening gifts there, having a big meal, playing cards.
A lot of cards, right? Sheephead, stuff like that, poker. So what was this thing about St. Nicholas Day?
Yeah, so we grew up in I went to a Catholic grade school. We grew up in a German Catholic family, and one of the things that we celebrated was St. Nick's Day. At school, it would be just St. Nick would either put something in our boots because we were required to wear boots in the wintertime, and he would just slip something in our boot, or we would have stockings hung up, and St. Nick would give us gifts. But the original German tradition was kids would leave their shoes outside and St. Nicholas would put something in their shoes if they were good on St. Nick's Day. If they were bad, that's when, what was it, Krampus or whatever would come
Krampus.
and beat you with a stick. if you were naughty.
with a stick.
I really know if there's actually a lot of different areas that do the shoe thing, but just for the bad kids, it's something different. It's like I think like
With a stick.
okay then.
You know it is. Sorry. I have to have fun with my buttons sometimes. Go ahead. You're saying.
Oh, I'm just saying some areas is either like a potato or like a rotten potato
Oh, yeah.
as well for the bad kids. Yeah.
Or an onion.
I haven't seen anything about the onions, but
Yeah. So where did the lump of coal came from then?
Actually, I don't know.
Okay.
we actually didn't look at that.
Oh,
Whoops.
because back to me, you think lump of coal would be good for people that were poor in England, and then they keep it nice and warm and toasty. So maybe we'll have to take a look at that. Pull up your phone or search it while we're talking about other things. So I want to know the story, Kristen, about the time that you guys were doing St. Nicholas Day and something come flying at you.
Yeah. So I have two younger brothers, and we were all sitting on the floor in front of the TV. It's not like a couch was big enough for all three of us or anything, but sitting on the floor watching TV, and all of a sudden the front door opened and this bag of candy comes flying through the front door, and it happened to hit the corner of the coffee table, busted open, and candy started spraying everywhere. And our first thought was, what the heck was that? And we were trying to figure out who was busting through our front door with candy. And then the next day, my mom's like, it was St. Nick, silly.
Sure it was. I could just imagine you guys sitting there and all of a sudden, because you guys were home by yourselves,
Yes.
and you were how old?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Were you over 10?
Yeah.
Okay. Over 12?
I don't know.
Yeah. See, because back when we were younger, we had latchkey kids, right? So,
Mhm.
well, I shouldn't say we, you. I'm a little older than you, but so you wouldn't have child services come after us if the parents left us sit at home for a while they went to the bar or to the church or to shopping or whatever. Well, I can just imagine the three of you because your brothers are younger than you,
Yeah.
and you're sitting there watching. What were you watching on TV? Remember
I don't even remember.
Charlie Brown Christmas
Probably.
or the Muppets?
I think I might have been Rudolph, the red-nosed reindeer.
I could just imagine that also the door flying open and slammed, I'm assuming right away.
Yeah.
And then all that candy went flying. So was your first instinct to grab the candy or to run to the door?
We ran to the door. And we're discussing it I'm like, I think I saw a green glove. maybe it was an elf.
Oh, that's crazy. So you're saying that you guys' Christmas Eve was where you did all the Santa Claus
Mhm.
gifts, and then Christmas Day is other stuff. So in my family, it fluctuated from when I was younger to when I got older, and a lot of it was because it depended on the amount of money we had, right? Because we were very poor growing up. It's weird. I say we're poor, but I never felt poor when I was younger. We always had food. We always had stuff. I think there was an old saying is you don't know what you don't have when you don't have it, right? So I didn't know you were supposed to do this or supposed to do that, but there was a lot of different traditions that happened in my house at different times of our lives, right? So one of the things that I enjoyed the most was the different kinds of Christmas trees that we had. So when I was younger and we didn't go out and buy a lot of commercial decorations and stuff like that, we had what's called an eating tree. So we would make string popcorn we'd take a needle and go through some kernels of popcorn and string popcorn, and that would go on the tree. And instead of ornaments, we would make cookies, and we tie strings to the cookies and hang the cookies on the tree. And so that was kind of cool because you put them all up, and then Christmas Eve we got to eat the tree. And sometimes that popcorn was pretty stale, And then sometimes, when we had started having pets, the cats would eat the popcorn, And it was like, okay, what are you doing here, And then we kind of moved in as my dad. One year, my dad, I think he bought a Kirby vacuum cleaner, right? And he used to sell Kirby vacuum cleaners door to door, and which I did myself down the road. But at this time, we happened to get a Kirby vacuum cleaner, and my dad, I don't know if you guys heard of the word flock.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew how to flock trees. And so he ended up flocking our entire tree with this white powder with this Kirby vacuum cleaner. And it was like all over the place. I mean, and instead of taking it outside and doing it, he did it in the house, right? And so that wasn't enough to do that. And it wasn't enough for us to be in Wisconsin and having the middle of winter with snow everywhere. But he decided to flock the inside of the windows. So we had this big pane window that was in the front living room with a tree in front of it, and he flocked the tree, and then he went around the edges of the window with flock. And my mom was like, we have to clean that afterwards. And
Mother Nature's probably going to do that anyway.
Well, and I remember her having to clean it with a razor blade. We couldn't get it off, right? So I was like, oh my God. So we went from eating tree to flock trees, and then we started doing things with actual decorations. And then because I don't know about you, but the real trees, it depends on the tree that we had. If we had a pine or if we had a spruce or whatever, I got headaches from it. I couldn't stand the smell. It made me, I don't know if I was allergic to it or what, but I always got a headache from the Christmas trees. And they'd always get wet or dry. I mean, because we don't put the water or we put water in the bottom of the tree, but then the dog will go underneath there and drink all the water. It's like, so what kind of trees did you guys have growing up?
I remember we had a live tree one time, but my brother Dan, had so much allergies. I think that was the one and only time we had a real tree. And the rest of the years we had a fake tree.
Mm-hmm. So did you guys do the candy hanging, candy canes and stuff like that too? Or
no, we did ornaments and lights and garland. And I think most of the time we had like the rainbow colored garland and multicolored lights, the big honk.
The big honkers, yeah, that got really hot.
Yes.
Right.
And anytime the garland would touch it, it would melt it.
Yeah.
And you couldn't get it off when it was time to take the tree
yeah,
down.
and you wonder why they used to have big fires back in the day. I mean, people would literally have these dead, dying, dried out trees in their living room.
I suppose, yeah.
And then they had these big old honking Christmas lights on there that were like 6 or 8 watt bulbs that would.
That'd be before LEDs were made. So yeah.
Yeah. And they would get so hot. I mean, I remember as a kid, I'd go up and touch it and it'd burn me. And it was like, how are you supposed to sleep with that thing on at night? Because there was always every Christmas somewhere in town, somebody's house burned down because of the Christmas tree went on fire.
Ugh.
That's like back when they had Thanksgiving, people have those turkeys, they deep fry the turkeys.
Oh, the chopping cold turkey into the, yeah, no.
And it's like fire everywhere. Well, that's what it was for us when I was growing up. The kids, everybody, it was like either there was a chimney fire because someone didn't know what they're doing with the chimney, or almost every year somebody's Christmas tree got caught on fire because of that. But so our traditions went from different things. We started out when I was younger that everything was done on Christmas Day. Anything that we had, we had to wait for Santa Claus to bring it and whatever it was. And then as we got older and our parents, were getting older and their jobs and lives changed, or because my mom had to work at a bar and stuff like that. And so they'd spend a lot of time in the taverns. It started going, okay, well, we're going to do one gift on Christmas Eve to kind of tie us kids over. And because we were so excited, but then we couldn't get up early in the morning and pull them out of bed. We had to wait for them to get up before we were allowed to go in and open up our gifts. And so that was their way of sleeping in after the night of merriment, right? And back when I was younger, I don't know if they still do this, but back when I was younger, there was actually in Wisconsin, it was a law that on Christmas Eve, they had to shut down all the bars at 6 o'clock in the evening. And so that, because there was too many people that would stay in the bar all night and never come home for Christmas, right? So all the bars, everything shut down at 6 o'clock, and they wouldn't open again till the next day. I think at noon, I think was the time. So I don't know if that's still today, if that's a law or rule or whatever. But it was a good one for when I was growing up, because there was back in the day we would call it social drinking. Today we would be calling them alcoholics, right?
Yeah.
So, and you had a lot of dads and people spending their gifts or their checks at the bar instead of buying gifts and stuff like that. So I remember one year there was a couple years that really stand out to me, but there was this one year that we had no gifts underneath the tree, and I was freaking out, and I was going, "Hey, we got no Christmas gifts. Santa Claus isn't coming. He ain't gonna come." My mom was like, "No, he's gonna be coming. He's gonna be coming. He's gonna be coming." And we just couldn't figure out what was going on. And so Christmas Eve came, we did not have our gift to open, and it turned out it was because we didn't have any money, right? And my dad didn't get his pay until later. And so when Christmas came the next day, we had gifts underneath the tree, but they're in these big black garbage bags, and none of them was wrapped, because, and I hope we're not blowing this for anybody that might be listening, because we didn't have Santa Claus. We were at that age where we're like, okay, my mom and my dad went to, we lived in Cornell at the time. He went over to the closest bigger city that was still open, and he went to, of all places, a Farm and Fleet. I think a Fleet Farm or Farm and Fleet, whatever the two was at the time. And he bought whatever he could and put it in these big black garbage bags. And I tell you what, it was probably the best Christmas that we ever had, because when you don't think you're getting anything, and then all of a sudden you wake up and there's a whole bunch of stuff there, even if it was cheap stuff that you didn't want, it was something that it wasn't there last night and it's there this morning. And you're just like, holy cats, So that was a Christmas that stood out for me. The other Christmas that stood out for me was, and my older brother hates this, because for some reason, my mom and dad, my brother I think he's 6 years older than me. And, and he was from my mom's first relationship. And so his dad and my dad weren't the same dads. So we had different body styles. So my older brother was this thin, we called him string bean, right? And he had blonde hair, thin little dude. And I was always a fat kid, a heavyset kid. But for some reason, my mom decided she would always dress us the same. And so one Christmas, we actually have a picture of my brother and I with the same outfits. But I'll tell you why. Because we were at Christmas, and we had these two humongous boxes underneath the tree, and with a lot of other little things, right? And it was Christmas Eve, and so we got to open up one box, one gift, and so we both chose the big box, right? And Mom and Dad said, "No, you guys, if you're going to pick the big one, you both have to take the big one." And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so my older brother was allergic. He could not stand beans. He hated beans. Can't handle beans, string beans, peas. I mean, he just hated beans, right? Couldn't stand them. And I loved grapefruit. Yeah, I loved grapefruit, right? So we opened up the box, and my brother got a case of beans. And he was like, "What is this?" And he was, I think he had to be about, I want to say he was about 10 or 11. So that means I was about 5 or 6. Maybe he was a little older, but he was like, "You got to be kidding me. What are you guys doing with these beans?" And then I opened up my box, and it was a case of grapefruit. And I was happy. I was like, yeah, I love grapefruit. And my mom starts laughing, and my dad was looking at my brother, and he's like, just keep digging in there. You'll find something. And I'm like, what do you mean? I got grapefruit. I was good with it. And my mom says, no, honey, just keep digging in there. There's something else in there. And so we're digging through it. My brother was the first to find it. It was wrapped in newspaper in between the beans. And it was a brand new Timex watch.
Wow.
Yeah. And because my dad had some connections with the local hardware guy that we got our Zenith television and wash machine dryers and stuff like that. And he had watches, and my dad got a brand new Timex watch for my brother. And then I dug and I found I had the exact same Timex watch.
Wow.
So we both had Timex watches. And this is where the creepy thing part comes in. So then we went and had to the local, I think it was either Kmart or whatever it was, that we went and got our photos taken, Sears or whatever it was, JCPenney's or Five and Dime or Ben Franklin. And she dressed us in these same striped, horizontal striped brown shirts with different like yellow and I'm a fat kid. You don't put me in horizontal. Right? My brother was fine, not me. We had the same frame glasses, the same shirts, the same corduroy pants, and we had the same Timex watches. And they made us sit there with our arm on the table with our pushing up our arms like this so you could see that we both had the same watch. And that was our picture. It was creepy. We weren't twins. We didn't even look alike. But
that was you think, are you sure you're not Italian or something?
I was like, what the heck, you know? It was crazy. But I remember that because I remember how mad my brother got. He was so upset. And so I was like, okay, that's pretty cool. And then the last one I want to share of a memory that I had with this is that our tradition was that we always had our Christmas dinner, right? And Christmas was the only time that we were allowed, when we were younger, to have a glass of wine. So we got a little bit of, my dad liked Mogan David, and he'd mix it with 7-Up or whatever it was, but he liked the Mogan David Concord grape wine. And we, my older brother, and my younger brother, we all got to have a glass of wine. Well, my little brother at the time had to be about, I think I want to say he's 5 or 6. So we were in Wisconsin. So there was nothing big about giving kids alcohol, helps them go to bed. But I didn't like the taste of the wine. And I liked it. My brother Jim hated it. And my mom didn't like it. And we had somebody else that was over that didn't like their wine. And so we're sitting at the dinner table. And my little brother Gary, he drank his wine all down because it was, it's almost like grape juice for him. And I was sipping mine because it made my belly warm, and I didn't really, I didn't want to chug it. And all of a sudden, Gary was sitting there, and he was, he'd fart, and then of course he'd laugh harder. We're like, what is going on? Where is Gary? We're trying to eat you. And he started laughing, and he was like, his face, his cheeks were all red, and he's farting, and he's laughing, he's farting, and he's laughing. My grandpa was living with us at the time. My mom was like, what is going on with you? And he was just laughing and falling over laughing. And we're like, oh my God, it's like he's drunk. And Mom goes, he can't be drunk. I just gave him like a shot of wine. And then Jimmy goes, no, I gave him my wine too. And then someone else said, no, I gave him my wine too. And so he had like 2 glasses of wine at that age, and he was hammered and was falling over, laughing, drunk, farting. It was like, oh, okay, dude.
He probably had the best Christmas of his life for a while.
He did.
I can't remember it though either.
No, and then he fell asleep. He didn't even get a chance to open up his gift. It was like, all right, Gary's out for the day.
Yeah, I think that was probably enough gifts for him that night.
Yeah. Well, that explains a few things, but yeah, he was. I mean, it was funny, but it was tragic at the same time. But everybody's like, because I know my mom gave her his wine too. I know that, but and then of course my brother, he would go around and sneak stuff. So I'm assuming he probably snuck more wine, but he was 3 sheets, and it was like, okay, I hope we don't puke. So what else? Any got memorable Christmas stories that you have besides the St. Nicholas thing?
There isn't one in particular. Oh, except for one time, like I said, we would go to the midnight mass and then come home and Santa would be there. Well, this particular year, I had my letter sitting there with the milk and cookies. Well, actually, the cookies were on the table and the milk was in the refrigerator. But Santa decided he didn't want the milk. He grabbed a beer instead.
Wisconsin.
Yep.
And then my first thought as a little girl was, how is he driving the reindeer?
He's going to get DUI.
How is he driving the sleigh? And Mom's like, oh, the reindeer do all the work anyway. But I had my letter sitting next to the plate of cookies, and here he had corrected all my grammar on my letter.
Oh my.
Well, we know who that was.
Santa was not a fan. I was not a fan of Santa that year.
So Chase, you're our son. I don't know if anybody knows it, but you're our son for you being me and Wifey's son.
And DNA test proved it.
You don't need a DNA test. I mean, he looks just like me. But so I know that we took some of our traditions that we had, but we modified them a lot for our family. So what were some of the traditions you remember?
One thing I want to say first, if I may, is you're talking about how grateful you were by the gifts that you got. Chase was one boy. His face lit up no matter what he opened up. No matter
I was just happy to get something.
No matter what was under that wrapping paper, his face lit up every time.
Yeah, I remember a year that we had like zero money, and every gift that we got him from the dollar store.
Yeah.
And he had like 20 gifts, but they're all like $1. And they're like, Hot Wheel cars or stuff like that. And every gift he opened, he got more excited each time. And we have a video to prove it. He was like, oh my God, oh, you're so awesome. He was so grateful as a child. What happened?
I'm still grateful, just not as vocal about it.
Oh, okay. So anything stand out to you about some of the traditions that we did?
Not really, because I wasn't really necessarily focusing on the traditions at all. Like, I know we didn't start it right away, but I know eventually we did like the one gift for Christmas Eve, but then that stopped after a while, and I didn't necessarily mind that. The only other tradition that I can really remember us doing is just making the cookies, and then putting like the decorations and on that. That's really the only tradition that we've done most of the time that I remember.
Which you don't do anymore.
Another tradition that we did for a long time that you may not realize is we waited till after Chase's birthday, because he's a December baby. Yeah. We waited till after Chase's birthday before any Christmas decorations got put up.
Yeah. Yeah, we wanted to make sure that your birthday was special, and then it wasn't clumped in with Christmas, because your birthday is on 16th of December.
Right.
So I think 9 days is enough, for getting different decorations up, and just kind of, and I hated decorations back when we were first in our marriage anyway. I didn't like it because our house was always so small. And I was like, you're just cluttering up the house with stuff that I can't deal with. But that was a conscious decision of us to make sure that you had your birthday separated from Christmas. And I don't know if did you feel that way or?
Not really. Mainly because I haven't really been focusing on that kind of stuff.
So you didn't feel that we made it separate them from Christmas? Did you feel your birthday blended in with Christmas?
No, but I didn't necessarily notice that it was separate either. Because as a kid, I kind of just took things as face value. I didn't really think much into it until later in life, where I was able to actually have deeper thought, then realize, oh, that's what's happening.
Okay. So
I do want to mention I do appreciate that, by the way.
Yeah, hindsight, right? You didn't know it then, but yeah. I'm trying to think of what did we do for traditional stuff besides the day before.
I know one thing after a while was making sure we find time to watch White Christmas.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, one thing we always did was I made sure that on our Christmas tree we would have candy canes.
Yes.
That was one thing we wanted to make sure we have because Chase liked candy.
Who doesn't like candy? Come on.
Yeah. But the thing was that you like putting them on the tree. So you like decorating the tree. You used to like decorating the tree.
Well, actually, I have a question for Wifey here. I'm sorry, it's still weird of having to say that. Do you remember for a good while what my personal tradition was for the tree?
Yes, I do.
Do
you want me to say it?
Go ahead.
So we had these ornaments and these different angels that were playing different instruments. And every year he would clump the angels together. And every year he'd go, we got to get the band back together.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yep. Every time, because I saw there was different angels to have different instruments.
Yeah.
And I want to put them together like they're a band.
Yeah.
Playing for Christmas on the tree.
I didn't know that.
And he'd always say, we get to get the band back together.
I had no idea about that. Oh, that's kind of cool.
Christmas.
Awesome. Wow. I had no clue. Of course, I was clueless when it come to decorating. I just sat in the corner and you guys did everything. Still the same thing it is today. And I think Ashley, I wish she would join us in one of these podcasts, but I don't think she really enjoyed decorating either. She's a lot like me, where Chase is a lot like you, get things done.
I wasn't really fond of decorating. I just liked helping.
Yeah. Well, it was time. It was, you were the one that, and I don't mean that Ashley's not, but you were the child that if mom would ask you to do something, you did it. You didn't put a buck about it, but you did the same thing when Ashley used to do it too. She'd go, Chase, go do the dishes for me. And you're like,
half the time I didn't have a choice.
So yeah, that's the bummer about being the younger brother, right? Especially when you stand 2.5 feet taller than she does, and she's looking up at you with her fingers wagging at you. It's like, that's not cool. But yeah, that was cool. I think Chase, you hit it. The one that we started was the White Christmas with Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye and George Clooney's mom or aunt, Rosemary Clooney. And I can't remember the other one that danced. I can't remember her name.
Sure.
What?
I'm not sure.
Okay. All I know is that it got to the point where you kids could cite the words for word.
Pretty much, yeah.
And there was one song that you'd always sing that would freak out your sister because you sounded just like Bing Crosby. What song was that? I'm gonna make you sing it, right?
Oh, I ain't not singing it.
Come on.
Why can't I think of it?
It's Counting Sheep.
No, Counting Your Blessings.
Counting Your Blessings. How did it start out? I can't remember how it started out.
I'm not singing it.
No, you don't have to sing. I'm just trying to remember how the first verses were. Because I remember the scene. They were down there having sandwiches by the fire, but I can't remember how the stupid song started.
It's like if you are worried and you cannot sleep, count your blessings instead of sheep.
Yeah. Go ahead, sing it.
Nope.
Can't get you to do it. Okay. So yeah, that's the and believe it or not, that kind of moves us into other topics. That's when the very first time that the song "White Christmas" was ever written and composed and sang was in that movie. They wrote it for that movie. Did you know that?
I heard that.
Yeah. Okay. So what else? What other traditions you think that? How did we were looking at some things? Where did the Christmas tree come from? Where you have your bullet points? Because I can't see your notes from here.
Well, another tradition that we had was the Advent wreath.
Yeah.
In church. That's another German tradition as well.
What is Advent?
So the Advent wreath was candles on a wreath that would symbolize the 4 weeks following up to Christmas. So, and I think it's modern day, the 4 candles represent hope, peace, joy, and love. The tradition started way back, when they would light candles during the winter solstice to help celebrate the return of light. So it sounds, from what I've read, it sounded like they would take like a wagon wheel and they would put candles on it and hoping that the Earth's rotation would
Oh, yeah.
go back to
bring more light.
bring more light.
Hmm.
Yeah.
That's where winter solstice came from then. Okay. Awesome. So kind of like the Jewish holiday for Hanukkah, only having enough oil to last, was it 7? Was it 7? I'm not Jewish, so I don't know.
I think they thought it was going to last 1 day and it lasted 8.
Yeah, something like that, right? Something like that. But anyway, what else were you looking at?
I was just looking at different cultures, and one of the traditions that we had when my grandma was still alive is we would have our big dinner, but she would always get coleslaw from KFC.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what was that all about?
I don't they have really good coleslaw, and I still like their coleslaw. I don't like their chicken very much, but that's for another show. But so that reminds me of the Japan tradition. So
I thought it was China.
no, it's Japan.
Japanese, yeah.
So Christmas isn't a big deal over in Japan because of their religion,
Christian, yeah.
but KFC always had a Christmas special during the holidays. So it got to be a tradition on Christmas Day. Everybody would go and have KFC chicken because it was on special. So
Yeah. That's kind of neat. So there's a lot of different cultures that in different areas that brought us things that we celebrate today in our modern Christmas worship. And a lot of complaints about some people that were like, well, hey, we're taking, it was Christ's birth, but we're incorporating pagan rituals and stuff like that. And bringing in Christmas trees and all this. And what was some of the other stuff? It was like the Roman, where did Christmas trees start? How did they start out? It was some kind of pagan ritual that we looked at, right?
I don't know how they started out, but I know that it was Martin Luther that decorated the first indoor Christmas tree because he wanted to replicate the lights he was seeing through the evergreens out in his property, and so he actually would put candles on the tree on the indoors. And can you imagine a dried Christmas tree? Talk about fire hazards.
Right. So it kind of like made it look like he saw the trees with the stars shining through the trees, right? Okay. So I got a couple of them, the history of Santa Claus and things like that. But the one that we were going to look at, let's see, it was the one about the Puritans. I want to share. Oh yeah. So I think I missed it. Where'd it go? So there.
Oh, okay. I just saw a little bit something about the Christmas tree.
Go ahead.
It looks like it's part of the ancient cultures, like the winter solstice.
From what I remember, I think it was supposed to.
It was indicate the sun god, and the fact that like the tree was able to keep its color through all seasons.
Right.
Oh, okay. Here.
And also the smell of pine is supposed to be to help like bring joy in that as well.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
Unless you're TJ, he didn't like it.
Oh, no, or Dan, right? So here's some facts about a few things I think were pretty cool. So 'twas the night before Christmas. So in 1822, Clement Clark Moore, he was a minister, wrote a long Christmas poem for his three daughters entitled An Account of a Visit from St. Nicholas, more popularly known as 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. So I think before we came up with Santa Claus things, there was a guy named St. Nicholas,
Mhm.
right? And so he was known as someone that would go traveling around. He gave all of his money away, right, to help people. But the main story was that he stopped this father from selling his three daughters into slavery or to prostitution, and he gave the money that he had as their dowry. I can't even say it right. So that they can get married, and so he became known for saving children, right? And so that he'd be giving gifts. But Moore's poem, which he initially hesitated to publish due to the nature of his subject, is largely responsible for our modern image of Santa Claus as a right jolly old fella, jolly old elf. Sorry. With a portly figure and a supernatural ability to ascend a chimney with a mere nod of his head. Although some of Moore's imagery was probably borrowed from other sources, his poem helped polarize the now familiar image of Santa Claus, who flew from house to house on Christmas Eve in a miniature sleigh led by 8 flying reindeer to leave presents for deserving children. An account of the visit from St. Nicholas created a new and immediate popular American icon. That was in 1822. So that's one thing that a lot, if we start diving into the religious aspect of it, that's where a lot of the Christians and the purists of it get pretty ticked off, because you're basically made a deity of Santa Claus. Right.
Mhm.
So if it was a profitable, or not profitable, but if you're good, you get something as a reward. But if you're bad, you get punishment. Right.
Mhm.
So that's where a lot of the Roman Catholics and the other ones are, the other religious areas where they were saying, well, if you commit sin, you're going to go straight to hell. But if you do good deeds, you get to be in the good graces of God, which we all know in our religion is no, it's not the way it is. You can only one way to get to the Father, and that's through Jesus Christ, right? So
Who is our gift on Christmas
Yeah.
Day?
it's a gift on Christmas Day, and He died and for our sins and was raised.
Which, if you think about it, is really ironic, because you get the idea is to get Christmas gifts if you're good. But in reality, we got the gift of Christ because we're not good.
Right. Exactly. So I'm trying to find that one that I had with the pilgrimage and the where the song came from. I thought I had it bookmarked, but you guys remember where it was? No? Can you guys talk about something else while I look? Of me carrying on the conversation?
So, something I found out about the coal, by the way,
Yeah.
is that it was kind of just to have just a made up as a deterrent for the kids. Like you get, actually, I think one of the traditions is that if you were good, you actually got an orange, so you
Oh.
have something to eat that night. And if it's bad, you have coal, and that's just trying to deter you to try to do better next time. But honestly, even with that, it's not necessarily something too terrible. But then, because you have something for warmth, you have to have nothing to eat for a bit.
Mm-hmm. There was actually one tradition that I read about, talking about the shoe thing again, where these young women on Christmas would throw their shoe over their shoulder out the front door. And if the shoe was pointing towards the door, that means you were going to get married that year. But if it was pointing away from the door, it meant that you were not going to get married
And then
anytime
you have to
soon.
go to a competition to rectify that fact.
Really?
I think that's what you said, right? It was like a festival or something you had
Yeah.
to go to.
What's this one about the roller skating thing you're talking about?
Yeah, so in Venezuela, they actually have where people would roller skate to church, and I don't know where that tradition started, but in modern day it became such a thing that they will close the streets down on Christmas Day so everybody can roller skate safely to church.
I definitely noticed there's a lot that stuff to do with shoes.
Yeah, I wonder
The shoes or socks.
Yeah, stockings.
Plus, if you have like the Yule lads from the Netherlands, so you put it on the window, and then over the night, I think there's like 13 Yule lads come by and they drop a little gift on the way over. Or if you're bad, it's like a rotten potato.
My cat sticks stuff in my shoes. Is that the same thing?
I mean, there is traditions that set up a piece of coal. It's either like a stick or a stone. Or, rotten potato.
So here's, I think I found it what we're talking about. So despite a Puritan's efforts, many colonists in New England did celebrate Christmas because the Purists were having an issue with the Roman Catholic and how they celebrated Christmas, which is they said it had nothing to do with the Bible because all the pagan resources and stuff like that. So when they left England to come to the Americans, they did it for religious freedom so that they could. And everybody thinks, well, they wanted to be free of all that. No, they wanted to be more restrictive and be able to have the strict direction of what the Bible said and things like that. Where the Catholics were kind of easing up things, kind of making it a little bit lighter. So, so the Puritans' efforts, many of the colonists in New England did celebrate Christmas, importing English customs such as drinking, feasting, mumming, and wassailing. Mumming is masking, which involves people dressing up in costumes and going from house to house, putting on plays and otherwise performing. So back in the day, no, this was where they had the masquerade parties and stuff like that. So that was they didn't just celebrate Christmas on one day. It was like a 12 days.
Okay.
That's where we have that 12 days of Christmas.
Yep.
So it took 12 days, to celebrate Christmas. There was the first day, it was a partridge in a pear tree, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that was kind of like Christ was being born type thing for them. And then 2 turtle doves, and so on and so forth with the song. And so as I went through the 12 days of Christmas, that's where their parties were going, Lords of Leaping, Milks of Mating, things like that. So part of that is that they would have a bunch of parties and food and stuff like that. And they had masquerade parties where people would put on masks. They'd go to the different houses and they'd have plays and stuff like that and do things. Okay. But then the other thing is the wassailing. They would travel between homes drinking and singing while passing around a bowl full of spiked ale or malted wine.
What would be spiked ale? I thought ale would
be spiced ale.
Okay, that makes more sense.
I had to pull my bifocals out of my eyes. Hang on.
They didn't have fentanyl back then. So
they didn't have fentanyl. Wow, where'd that come from?
What else would it be spiked with?
Fruit punch.
Oh my gosh. So, that being said, we were thinking about that. We've heard we actually had to look up what wassailing was, but then I reminded me that there was actually a Christmas song that had that in it. So it goes like this.
Now that song makes so much more sense.
Doesn't it though? Because I was a kid, I go, what's wassailing? So it was like, okay, now things start making more sense, right? And so there's a lot of Christmas songs that you listen to and you go, if you're like, we just used to sing them, and then you think about there was a meaning behind those songs. Mm-hmm. So I think it's, at some point for our what to do, we start diving into some of those points, right? So there was another point that you had. I can't remember what it was. Something about a pickle.
Oh, the Christmas pickle?
Yeah, what's up with the Christmas pickle?
Well, it was actually, I think, started as the Christmas gherkin because it was a German tradition.
Oh, okay.
Because what happens is that you take a pickle and actually eventually turn into just like an ornament of a pickle, and you hide it into the tree, and whoever finds it is supposed to have well wishes and all of that for the rest of the year.
A happy new year.
Happy New Year, huh? Yeah, you get a happy New Year. You get the pickle. So you know what's funny by that statement is because back when I was doing sales and telemarketing and stuff like that, we had a guy who owned a fast food restaurant, and he did a speech or a training that we had to go through. I think it was, the company's not with us anymore. It's called Figgies, but he says, give them the pickle. And what it was that somebody came up to the counter at a restaurant, a fast food joint, and they asked for additional pickles to go with their meal. And they said, well, we can't do that. And they go, well, what do you mean you can't do that? He goes, well, we could do it, but we're going to have to charge you like 79 cents or something, or $1 or something for additional pickles. And that turned off the customer, right? And so his thing was, you give the customer the pickle because you're going to make them happy and they're going to feel like they got something special. And I wonder, you kind of tie that into hiding the pickle into a tree, and if you find it, you get good luck for a year. I mean, there's something about pickles and
Shoes and pickles.
Shoes,
That's the real.
yeah, that's the real Christmas thing, right? So yeah, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't really point out that a lot of the traditions that we have started in the 1800s, like the 19th century of stuff. So it wasn't something that was really brought into our modern day thing because of what the real meaning for Christmas was, right? So we brought in Christmas because it's supposed to mark the birth of Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Now there's a lot of debate about that, but Christ was actually born in June or July or whatever.
In March,
something like that. But because there was no calendar back then, because if you think about it, people always say, well, how do you're going against other religions and other beliefs and stuff like that. Well, how does every place in the world mark time?
astrology.
No, they mark time through the calendar, and it's all based upon before Christ was born and after Christ was born. Everybody says in AD or BC. Everyone, every culture. When you look back at China's history, they said, oh, this was 600 and something AD. The Ming thing was this and that AD. And that was Anonymity, it was after Christ, right? So it was, everybody measures the time in our calendar through before Christ was born and after Christ was born. So how do they make the argument that Christ was never important? Wasn't the real thing? I just don't get it, right? So to me, when we look at Christmas and we think about traditions, I really hope that parents, I mean, it's nice to have kids to be able to, have this thing with Santa Claus and things like that. But the traditional direction of saying, well, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. And he can see you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. So this is some deity, right? That you're making these kids feel that they're always being watched and that they're going to be punished if they do bad and they get rewarded for good. And that, I think, is a message that Christian parents need to balance, right? I know with our grandson, we had a lot of discussions with his parents about, you're robbing the magic of Christmas away. And they're like, well, no, we're not robbing the magic of Christmas. We're bringing in the true magic of Christmas, right? And so the only thing that you had to balance was if your child was going to go to school and blow somebody's mind, and totally break this other kid's heart because they don't follow Christ. But it does give them an opportunity to share without, sharing the testimony and witnessing. And they go, oh no, that's not Santa Claus. It's Christ. Do you know who Jesus is? And so can you imagine a 4-year-old telling another 4-year-old about who's God, who's Jesus? Can you imagine that conversation?
Yeah.
I mean, talk about from the mouth of babes, right?
Well, it's just like Chase when he was 4 years old talking about Christ.
Yeah. Tell that story. That's an awesome blessing story.
So we were sitting at the dinner table, and 4-year-old Chase decided he was going to discuss Jesus and how he had met Jesus.
Now, we were not walking our path with Christ then. We never went to church. We didn't take the kids to church or nothing like that. We didn't even talk about God much back then.
Mm-hmm.
This was before we came back to Christ.
Right. And we all kind of looked at him and like, okay, what are you talking about? And he said that he was with Jesus and was, I don't remember.
He was sitting on a rock.
But he just said that he was with Jesus, and Jesus said, it's time for you to be born. And so the angels brought him down to earth, is all I remember.
And put him in mommy's belly.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that conversation at all?
A little bit, yeah, actually.
What do you remember of it?
Just that something that appeared in my head, and I just felt like sharing it, and just happened to just tell you guys.
Yeah. Do you ever think about that moment was that a moment of all of a sudden, aha, or?
I tend to look back at that and just say, like, was that just my kid's imagination, or did that actually happen? Like, I am still following my path as it is today, but you still have to kind of think of, like, was that just a kid talking, or did that something that actually happened and happened to somehow remember at that point?
Yeah, see, that's where it kind of threw me off, because it was like, how would you have even as a child come up with that as an imaginary story? Because you never were told about Christ. You were never told about how you got into mama's belly or anything like that. You would have not had that knowledge to be able to have that kind of imaginative story of having a conversation with, and the man's name was Jesus, because we didn't have that.
Well,
And
I
it's not
believe
like-
I actually, I thought I said something about God, not really Jesus.
Okay.
I remember Jesus, but I could be remembering it wrong. But the thing that got me is you were saying it as a memory. It wasn't like, oh, I think I know who this person is. I remember like, no, I did this.
Yeah, and I think when and I remember when you were younger, when you were making up stories, when you were doing your imagination and pretending and stuff, you would kind of go, and you could tell that you were thinking it up at the time. When you had this conversation, you already knew what you were going to say. It was already, this is what happened.
Okay.
And say, well, I met God once. What do you mean you met God? Well, I was sitting there and I think you said he's sitting on a rock or a cloud or something like that. He goes, and then God came over to me and said, it's time for you to go down to earth now and be with your mommy. And I mean, you weren't like, one time, kids, when they make up stories, just one time, I mean, we do it with Dorian all the time. When he's like, reads this book. Dorian, you gonna read me a book? Yeah. There was this dump truck and it pushed the dirt here. No, you were like, boom, 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 boom. Like it was a memory, like it happened. And you were just telling us it, but I could be.
All I know is your dad and I were sitting across from the table from each other, and we're like, what?
Yeah. Almost as bad as the time when your mom put you in the corner and left you there because she forgot about you and you fell asleep.
Why would you bring that up?
Don't worry, I didn't forget.
I know you didn't.
Well, that we're getting off topic, but it was a great thing. We got one bullet point off. So it just gives us another reason as we get through this stuff to find out what we need to do for what to do in the future, right? So we want to thank you guys for listening to us. This is Tim Johnson, TJ, along with Chase. I almost said the wrong thing. I almost said the bad Chase Seawasey. and wifey over here. So thank you everybody for joining us, and we hope that you come back and listen again.